I use Typhoon 3 almost exclusively just because of the extra open time.
Yeah, so
when
I
you're
actually
trying to square up doors,
I wanted these to
meaning it doesn't dry as fast. Is that what
correct?
You're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted these to set up quickly because I only have 2 clamps.
Okay.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. I'm joined by Kiley Jacques, Design Editor.
Hello.
Matt Milham, Deputy Editor.
How's it going?
And producer Jeff Rose.
Hey.
Please email your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast.
Here we are again.
It always kind of starts the same way, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, when you work off a script, that's the way it works.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
I think that's good. I like the comfort of that. It's
Yeah.
a soft landing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to get rough, though, I tell you here. Starting with some listener feedback. This is from our friend Ian. Ian Schwant is what's his job? Project manager?
Lead carpenter?
Lead
Yeah,
carpenter
lead carpenter.
for Hudson Valley Preservation. And he wrote in regarding our discussion in episode 229 regarding whether someone should hire a laborer or an apprentice. And I think we pretty universally said apprentice because it sounds better.
I don't remember. Was I
that
on
the
that
logic?
I don't know. That was the gist of the thing.
one? Okay.
You weren't on that show?
I don't know.
I don't remember that question either.
Yeah. That might have been a Brian.
It might have been
Yeah.
Brian and Rob.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, we decided that apprentice was a better descriptor. Well, Ian writes in to set us straight here. In my not-so-humble opinion, if a company is going to bestow upon a new hire the title of apprentice, the company has an obligation to teach the individual the basics of the trade performed by that company. The misclassification of laborers as apprentices is a serious issue in the building trades. Too many companies lack the resources or the true desire to teach a young person the trade. They are really just after cheaper labor. For a thorough breakdown of the true cost of an apprentice, see Gerstel's book, Nail Your Numbers. You guys are right that a young worker would prefer to be called an apprentice than a laborer, as the former is viewed as the first step in starting a career. On top of all that, if you read the link to the Department of Labor website, you'll find that the terms apprentice and apprenticeship have legal definitions for the responsibilities of both the employer and the employee. Rant over for now. It's a great point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're going to have an apprentice, then you have to teach them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think we were saying that wasn't part of our calculus, but I don't think we said it explicitly. But if it is a good distinction to make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he sent a sticker address, which
Yeah.
I appreciate greatly.
I'll just drive it to his house. He's not that far from me.
You have recommended that same book before, haven't you?
Yeah, that's the Bible if you want to make any money in the contracting business.
Yeah. But I do want to add that Ian does a great job of teaching his crew when they show up. He's got a couple guys that are reliable.
Boy, I think that's part of the legal obligation that he's talking about for both parties. I think the apprentice has to show up to work. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
one of my esteemed colleagues in a past life said the first part of success is showing up. And that's a very
On
good
time.
point. Yeah, and if you're showing up on time, you're late, I would say.
Yeah.
10 minutes early is 5 minutes late.
I know you operate that way.
Okay, so we also heard from Josh. Hi, I love to listen to you guys on my 1-hour commute. I know you've beat the Sanden hot water heater topic to death, but one last thing I hadn't heard mentioned is the refrigeration circuit is self-contained in the outdoor unit. All you do is hook up the water line to the indoor tank and power it. There is no inside condensing unit. I mentioned this because I had said, one of the negatives was CO2-specific refrigeration tools and knowledge being in short supply. In a new install, a plumber and electrician should be able to do everything. There are some best practices to avoid freezing the water line in cold climates that Sanden covers. I don't have one of these water heaters, but I keep my eye on promising up-and-coming technologies. Well, thanks, Josh. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, so I looked at the installation of these. I looked up the installation guide and all that, and it's pretty crazy. Like, so you basically just run the water line. One runs out, the cold water line runs out. It basically runs actually through the tank to begin with, out to the compressor unit outside. It hooks into the side of it, and then about 2 inches up, the hot water comes out goes back into the house. And you have to insulate those really well if you're in a cold climate so they
gotta
don't
think,
freeze.
right?
Yeah, but yeah, it just runs right back to the
Do they
the
sell
basically
specific
tank.
insulation for this in a cold climate? What is going on here?
Yeah, the one that I saw getting installed was like in the Northwest, and they put, I think it was like 3/4 inch thick.
But it doesn't get
No.
cold there.
Right.
No,
That's
that
not
was
a test.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a thing. That's like, you need
Where's
a lot
this
more
guy?
insulation than that. Because, yeah, it does scare me a little bit to just have those water lines, and they're 1/2 inch water lines. So, that's basically to maintain, I guess, the flow rate in the thing. It's designed to have 1/2 inch lines going in and out.
That's going to be
But-
a downside to a lot of folks who want like the car wash, jacuzzi, shower.
What's the material of the lines made of? I mean, what are they?
I don't know that it matters. The one I saw, they were hooking up copper. So that scares me a little bit because PEX is going to be a little more resilient in the cold. I assume you can hook PEX up to it, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, let's beat this Sanden thing to death even further, I would say. So any of you who have insights onto these other intricacies of the install, I'd love to hear more about that. We also heard from Doug. Hi, y'all. It was fun to have Brian on podcast number 229. In 2007, our daughter flew to Charleston to visit a friend. While there, she met some guy who was more interesting than us, and she ended up moving there. They were married in 2009 and have lived in the area since. They don't live in Charleston proper because of the high cost, but on our visits, we've spent a lot of time there. According to our son-in-law, it is almost always impossible to get permission to tear down an old house regardless of the condition. This has led to what is referred to as a demolition by neglect. Once a house has collapsed, they can clear the debris and build new. That's what Brian was saying, is
yeah.
they have to save everything. And
Yeah.
Well, remember that house that he sent us a photo of? That was just
oh my God, they should have let that thing fall into the
pitiful.
ground.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. Demolition by neglect.
This is good.
Great term.
This is some further feedback on our discussion regarding subslab ductwork. Hi there, first-time listener. Enjoyed the question and answer section. I have a mid-century modern house, slab on grade with ductwork, also under the slab in Michigan, so I was particularly interested in that question. What do you all think about something like duct armor for coating the ducts? Abandoning them isn't really an option. There's no attic, and the radiant retrofit is too cost prohibitive. Would that product remedy all the concerns? I got a very simple answer. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's basically latex paint is what this looks
that
like.
they spray on the inside of these ducts that you can't get to any other way.
And it has a lot of zinc in it.
And it's
I don't know
meant
exactly what that's
to
supposed
solve
do.
the problems of water intrusion and mold that we identified previously as the problem with these things, and
Right.
corrosion.
If the water is coming from sort of like outside of the duct or on the, the interior diameter of the duct somehow, then sure. But if the water is coming through the slab and you don't have a vapor barrier, then I don't see how that helps anything at all.
Right. And I mean, if there are big holes in the ductwork, which I'm sure is common because of the harsh environment they're in, and it's sheet metal, I don't think that would solve the problem. I mean, when you say you can't abandon them, I have to take you on your word at that. But I mean, there's always places to run ductwork in your house if you're willing to build chases. You know, it's you can't put it in the attic. And I don't know what do you mean by the house doesn't have an attic. It might be inaccessible or too low to put ductwork in, but
Flat roof. Mid-century modern.
it could
Might
have a
just have a
flat
flat
roof.
roof.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if at all possible, I say get rid of that ductwork and the slab.
Start building
It's-
some soffits.
Yeah, or save your pennies for radiant hydronic
Get that mini split.
or mini splits. That's a surefire solution, right?
Yeah.
As long as you got some cash.
What do those go for?
I think the least expensive ones from the Chinese manufacturers that I've seen on eBay are like $1,500 or $1,000 for the little ones. Most of those are cool only, not heat and cool.
Okay.
But I think more realistically, they cost $3,000 to $5,000 for
That's
the
what I would've thought.
smaller units for the name brands. You still considering those for your place?
Maybe. I got an advertisement from Mitsubishi last week.
Okay.
Trying to sell me on it. Apparently
seemed
there
like
are
the
some
number
state
one seller.
incentives that would maybe help offset the cost, but I don't have a
Say
separate
what would
water
help
heater.
offset the cost? I'm sorry.
Some sort of state tax incentives.
Okay.
Up to like $2,500 or something like that. But I don't have a separate water heater. I have basically all in one. I have a boiler, on-demand boiler that provides my heat and hot water, and it's not that expensive.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, like, I'm not spending a ton of money on heat and hot water right now. We just got oil the other day. I'm burning about a little under 2.3 gallons a day overall.
So why were you giving consideration to?
Because I
Mini
just
splits.
like the idea, and also for the cooling, because right now we run just window
air
units.
conditioners, yeah.
So
Gotcha.
I'd love to get rid of those.
Yeah, those
But-
are pretty awesome.
By all accounts, the comfort is way better than most things.
Yeah.
The
Doesn't
quiet.
fluctuate as much.
But I don't, my house isn't that tight. I got
That's
six,
just it.
Yeah.
6 ACH 50. So,
Have you tested it?
Yeah.
That's pretty high.
Yeah, that's pretty high. It was 9 until I closed off the
Well, that's-
unused
that's- yeah.
flue.
That's a pretty impressive
Remarkable
improvement.
Yeah. It's amazing when you cut off a 12 by
Yeah,
12
right.
hole.
Huge hole through the roof.
Yeah.
I don't want to know what mine is.
We're bringing the
You guys are going to bring it
we're
over,
gonna bring
yeah.
the lower door over and give it a test. Oh boy, this is my favorite correspondence we got.
It's very dense.
I'm not going to read. Well, I might. Anyway. Hello, FHB podcast crew. My name is Dr. Lee Newton. I'm an eye doctor and a real estate developer in Bay City, Michigan. I always enjoy your podcast, and the mention of bungee cords in episode 214 was particularly meaningful to me because of my work. So this started when Andy Gray sent us a list of the things he buys at Harbor Freight.
Right.
And among them were rubber bungee cords. And then we heard from our friend Andy Engel, who
Talked about Gary Katz.
and he said, "Don't ever use bungee
Right.
cords.
Yeah.
What are you people suggesting it for?" So, I guess I think I can guess where Dr. Lee Newton is going to come down on this issue. He says, "I have at least one patient with a prosthetic eye due to a bungee cord misadventure, and others who have experienced sight-threatening injuries from bungee cords. Here is my opinion on bungee cords. They are garbage. Do not use them. Do not go within 50 feet of a bungee cord that is in use. They are made cheaply no matter where they are made. Why else do you think that we commonly see metal hooks and frayed ends along the side of the road and in parking lots? The hook is small enough to fit within the confines of the bones that collectively make up the eye socket, called the orbit. Something this small causes more damage because of the forces imparted on the eye itself and not the bones. It's the same reason a racquetball causes more eye damage than a basketball. My advice is to use a ratchet strap instead, and do not allow anyone you know to use bungee cords. They should be outlawed because they are stupid and dangerous. Thanks for letting me vent. Keep up the great work."
This isn't the question I thought you were reading about. Patrick and I gave ourselves the willies discussing this.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's just like any discussion of eye injury is just creeps me out, right?
Yeah. But you were still using them, right? You were using them on your wood pile.
I have them on my wood
I use
pile.
them too. I use them to keep my
I mean,
trunk
like
down.
using a ratchet strap on a wood pile is really not an answer.
A brick.
Maybe that's it. Maybe
Yeah.
it's as simple as like putting ropes with filled water,
One of the-
milk jugs or whatever. You
Yeah.
know?
Or just some
Oh,
of those
that's a good
pieces of
idea.
wood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sacrifice them.
Weight it from the bottom. Is that what you're
Yeah.
suggesting? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't disagree. Bungees are dangerous. He has a couple.
Ratchet straps are a pain in the butt, though.
They are. Yeah, and especially
Bungees
for
are
something you're
faster.
gonna be opening all the time.
Yeah.
He had a couple web links on here to another ophthalmologist. Matt Weed, MD, says, I've seen people with severe traumatic injuries to their eyes from every possible cause you can imagine. Knives, guns, pencils, fists, fireworks, Christmas stocking holders, tennis court net cranks, lasers, bleach, acid fire, baseballs, hammering, baling wire, you name it. But surprisingly, I've seen more patients with severe eye injuries due to bungee cords than any
Wow.
other single mechanism.
Wow.
I love his list.
I know. I like the
Christmas
list too.
stocking holders.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't laugh. These people are
No,
probably
so
blind.
apparently what those things are is there's like a piece of cast iron you put on your mantle, and what happens is the stockings hanging down, little kids pull onto themselves.
Oh, I don't like that story.
Yeah,
Okay,
well,
let's
it's
move on.
Tennis net tensioner thing. That scares me. Because that's.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
someone fell into it, right?
Well, that or it's a cable that someone was tightening and it snapped.
Snapped. Oof. All right. Enough.
If that's not enough, this is a Canadian.
Oh, you
I
have
got
more?
yeah. This is a Canadian health safety website. The backlash from the bungee cord can be so powerful that it can reach speeds of 100 kilometers per hour. This amount of power can result to cuts to eyes, internal bleeding the eye, traumatic cataracts, and possible detachment, tearing of the retina. victims can experience mild to severe loss of vision, and in most cases, victims have to have their eye removed. Okay, so I'm convinced.
Do that with a spoon or? 100 kilometers an hour, though. How fast is that? 4 miles an hour?
No, it's like 70, right?
No, it's like 62. But still.
Yeah. At your
They
squishy
do it
little
in
eyeball.
kilometers an hour, so it sounds more dramatic.
I think we should start the traumatic injury podcast.
Oh boy, you just opened up a can of worms.
So, like, and anytime I'm on a construction site, whether it's for a photo shoot or when I'm visiting in the neighborhood or whatever, it's like the people there inevitably start talking about the gory injuries they've seen or experienced on the job site. It's just the reality. If you do that work, you can't help but be interested. So let's talk about your reciprocal roof. It's a subject we haven't revisited in a while.
Yeah.
I suspect it's still under construction.
Yeah, the majority of the roof is done. I just haven't capped it. It's been,
When you say cap,
snowing on
can
and
you
off.
explain to our listeners what you're talking about?
Yeah, so all the rafters, basically they lay over each other in a circle around the perimeter of the rim, I guess
Yeah.
it is.
The top.
Yeah, so it leaves a hole in the middle. And so I got to figure out how to cover that hole in the middle. I mean, a lot of people just leave it open for an outbuilding. You don't necessarily need to close it off.
Right, and the origin of the building, it's quite possible that was where the smoke got out
Yeah.
from a cooking fire or a heating fire, right?
Yeah. So, but I'd like to cap it off somehow. And I just need to get up there and, dummy up a little cap of some sort.
what would you
figure out
use
exactly what I'm
for
gonna
material
do.
for that?
Probably just more wood framing, and then copper is what I planned for the cap. I
That
bought a
sounds sharp.
bunch. It's expensive.
Yeah, it is.
But I'd like to nail down what I'm going to do before I start cutting and soldering copper.
Yeah.
This involves soldering. That was my next question.
Probably.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you done
you
this
done-
work
yeah,
before?
right.
No, never.
Good for you.
Awesome. I think
Sure Rob
Andy
will have some
Grayson, you
pointers.
should have a confab because he's good at that.
Yeah?
Yeah, they do they rebuild box gutters and stuff like that
Oh,
with
cool.
copper.
Yeah.
Make flashings that can't be watertight any other way.
Yeah.
How much copper did you buy and what did it cost?
So far, not a lot. I think I bought, 20 feet of maybe 6-inch wide or 4-inch wide. I can't remember. And then I had a bunch of other copper sheeting that I had gotten other ways. So
I don't think I'm going to ask about the other ways.
Yeah, I probably have about 5 or 6 square feet worth right now. And
That's
it's
a pretty
expensive.
penny,
I mean,
yeah.
the one roll of stuff I bought was, I can't remember, $60, $70. It's
And
been
it
a
was
couple
narrow. It's
months.
3 inches, you said?
Oh,
It's like
I
4.
I got-
it's like somewhere between 4 and 6. I
I
can't
got
remember.
ripped off then. Somebody charged me $200 for what essentially looks like let's say 8x10 little sheet.
But
and
how
I made
thick-
a boot out of
Yeah,
it.
the gauge, like how
Okay.
thick it is.
It
Yeah, I
depends
don't
on
know
how thick
that.
it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's commonly 16 or 20 ounce per square foot in our world, as I recall.
Yeah, and I couldn't even tell you what it was. It was like 2 or 3 months ago that I bought this when I was still kind of hitting the roof hard, and then it started snowing, and then I stopped. So
So are you out of winter where you're at?
pretty much, I think we still have a little snow on the ground, but it's been, in the 40s almost all week
It's so
here.
temperate that I'm already on mold patrol.
Are you getting
I can't believe it. I thought I
bulbs?
had a few. No, I'm talking about in my house.
No, I'm not. I know.
What do you say?
Just throw away all those old
Did you say bulbs as in like?
Bulbs.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Well, that's
irises or
switching
daffodils.
gears. I wasn't
Yeah.
thinking. I'm thinking about the mold in my bathroom, not bulbs. So
you don't have bulbs.
no.
Ours are coming up.
Yeah, it's like where are we? February, late February. It's spring here.
It's the banana
Yeah.
belt of New England. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You had a discussion about
Oh, I was just going to mention that the Connecticut chapter of the Building Science and Beer organization has kicked into gear.
tell me about this.
Matt,
You're saying all the things I like.
Yeah, well, you'll be at the next one. I imagine.
I hope so.
Yeah, Rob, Matt, and I went, and it was a pretty good turnout. There were like 15 people, and
So this is the outfit that Ian works for, right?
Yeah.
His company owner.
Yep, Hudson Valley Preservation.
And who else put this little shindig on?
They hosted it, just them. So their firm was there. We met at their firm, and yeah, it was great. It'll evolve. there was one that just started in D.C. and Seattle too, so it's gaining momentum. So it's just a bunch of folks get together, mostly builders. A couple of designers were there and talk about building size. It was a little scattered because we had to sort of nail down some topics we wanted to discuss.
Yeah, this was the
kind of
maiden voyage, right?
Meet and greet, yeah. So
how was the beer?
I enjoyed it. There was a nice selection.
All right.
Yeah.
Got to make it next time.
Yeah.
I'm still working on my cabinets. I think I told you guys the boxes and the face frame are done. So now I started making doors last weekend, and I decided to do stub tenons after Matt and I had an exhaustive conversation one morning. I still don't like them, but they're going to be fine.
What don't you like about them?
I think they're flimsy, and I'm using softwood. My doors are pine. I think if you were using maple or oak, or some hardwood, it would be a more confidence-inspiring assembly method. But
Are
what
you
kind
able
of glue?
To? Oh, go ahead.
What kind of glue?
Yeah.
Type on 2?
Mm-hmm.
Should
That's
I be
probably fine.
Should I use something else?
I use Type on 3 almost exclusively just because of the extra open time.
Yeah, so I
when you're
actually
trying to square up doors,
I
it's
wanted
helpful.
these to suck.
Meaning it doesn't dry as fast. Is that what
Correct,
you're saying?
yeah.
Okay.
I wanted these to set up quickly because I only have 2 clamps.
You only have 2 clamps? How's that possible?
Well, so to clamp up doors, you need good clamps of the right length. And so that I bought a pair of 24-inch Bessie high-quality woodworking clamps. So
Like F or what's that?
they're F.
Okay.
And they were $20 a pop. So, that's all I could spare.
I got plenty of clamps you can borrow,
But then I'll have to make more doors.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun. I've glued them up into 3-sided doors. I'm going to slip the panel in, and I'll probably glue it in place, and then I'll put the 4th side on and put them on together. And it's amazing how much time it takes to make what amounts to an armful of door parts. It took half a day.
Yeah. What did you do that on a table saw, or how'd you do it?
So I set up both table saws. The saw stop I used to cut the stuff to length and to make the grooves in the stiles and rails. And then I made the stub tenons on the other table saw with a dado set. And I set up the rib fence with a little block on it to ensure that they were the right length.
Yeah. It is nice having 2 table saws, one to just like rip and make cross cuts and stuff.
That
and the
saved
other
a
one
lot
with
of
the dado.
time. It saved a lot of time.
Yeah.
Because especially if you make a mistake and you've changed your setup and and then you have to try and replicate the original setup, which is always dodgy.
What were you needing the domino for? Was that
To
a different
join the
part?
stiles and rails on the door parts. And that's way faster and easier. Should we take a question or two?
Why not?
So this is one of our favorite subjects here. Lee writes in, I have a question about sizing mini split heat pumps in a cold climate. I ran a quick manual J and learned that I need about 12,600 BTUs for cooling and 14,600 for heating in our northeast climate. So I asked him later, and it's in, do you know where Pine Bush, New York is?
Yep. I used to ski against them in high school, and my cousin lived there for years.
So it's cold, obvioally, if they have a ski hill.
coldish. Yeah. This was cross-country skiing.
Okay.
So that you
That was
couldn't
a
even
while
make your
ago.
own
It's
snow.
probably temperate now.
Yeah.
That was a while ago. I decided on a Fujitsu 12RL S3HY with a base pan heater, which supplies 12,000 BTUs in cooling and 16,000 BTUs in heating. The minimum operating temperature for heating was rated at -15. Problem solved, right? Nope. Upon reading the AHRI rating, I learned that the unit's high heat rating at 47 degrees is 16,000 BTUs, but its low heat rating at 17 is only 9,600. Okay, let's stop right there. Why is this?
Less efficient at lower temperatures.
It can't get as much heat out of the air because there's not as
Right.
much out there, right? So if
Yeah.
you have a refrigeration cycle, its efficiency is going to go down when the air is super cold if you're trying to make heat with it. If you're trying to make cold with it, like in air conditioning, the efficiency is going to go down when it's really hot outside. And that's why there is some cushion with regard to equipment sizing when you're using a refrigeration cycle. This low heat rating seems to occur when it's really cold, and I would need every last BTU. I checked some other units, and this seems to be the norm. Yes, that's for the reasons we've just stated. This is just part of the refrigeration cycle, is diminishing returns with temperature extremes. I thought it would just mean more power consumption, not less BTUs. I hope I'm misunderstanding the relationship between the manual J recommendation and the low heat rating. To further muddy the waters, Fujitsu stated in their submittal form under capacities that the unit is rated for 16,000 BTUs of heat, but has a minimum of 3,100 and a maximum of 22,100. I've heard now. So why is there a maximum beyond what its rated capacity? Yeah. Because if the temperature is pretty close to what you want to make the indoor temperature, it's going to work much more efficiently because there's just a lot more heat out there. Right. But they don't want you to design the system with that expectation because most of the time it's not going to be getting that capacity.
Okay.
Yeah. And similarly, if you're trying to make your house cold and it's dry and cooler outside, you're going to get more BTUs cooling than you would ordinarily, or what the nameplate would say.
So is that it's rated at 16,000 BTUs heat at 47 degrees Fahrenheit. Is that a standard number that all manufacturers go by? Or
no,
is that
I think it's unit dependent. And it, based on the efficiency of the compressor and the refrigeration cycle, you could get more or less BTUs out of the same size unit, right?
Yeah. I'm just wondering because, that makes it a little hard to do a apples and oranges comparison across brands if they're not standardizing what they're measuring.
So I believe that the high and low temperatures, they tested at high and low temperatures to see
makes sense.
And those are standard. But what you get from the individual unit is based on that, its efficiency. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
A little bit.
Can you help me?
Everybody's rated at 47 degrees.
Okay.
Yes.
They're all on the same playing field.
That's what you were asking.
That's what I'm asking, yeah.
Yeah, but the amount of BTUs you get there is going to vary depending on the unit. Yes.
That is understandable.
Yes.
But, are they, if they're not measuring them all at that same temperature, then it's kind of like...
They are. This standard looks at that and the performance at the various temperature gradients. Okay. I have heard not to oversize mini-split heat pumps because they will lose efficiency and that incorrect sizing can lead to condenser becoming a block of ice. Is the only solution to install inefficient backup electrical baseboard heating or massively oversizing the unit? I do not have natural gas available. I would appreciate any insights. Lee, this is such a good question. So don't worry about it.
Don't worry about what?
Because when he gets the house up to temperature, and even if it drops really cold for a few days, you don't need all the BTUs to keep it at that temperature. And if you're worried about that, an electric space heater on those very rare occasions when your mini split can't keep up can help keep your house comfortable for far less money than it would be if you decided to oversize the equipment, which would cost more and cost more to operate. Mm-hmm. You're looking at me like my head exploded.
I know so little about mini splits that I can't weigh in at all.
And from my understanding, both the Mitsubishi and the Fujitsu output ratings at low temperatures are very conservative, that they actually do better in a real-world scenario than the manufacturer says they do. And this has been demonstrated by folks who built hyper-efficient homes in very cold places, and this is their only heating system. Or get a wood stove for the really cold.
That would have been my solution, yeah.
So...
But it sounds like he's got a pretty tight house.
Yeah.
And
he gave us some of the specs on his house, and it sounds like he's
and
done
that's the
pretty
other
well.
thing. If you have a good envelope, your house is going to be tend to stay the same temperature anyway, even in super cold snaps.
Yeah.
That's the benefit, right?
That's the benefit. Resiliency is what we say now, right? Because if you have a power interruption and you have no heating, you want your house to stay warm enough that your pipes don't freeze and your family doesn't hate you. This is another good question. This comes from Dan. Hello, I'm in the process of remodeling a 1923 Craftsman bathroom. I have demolished everything down to the studs and have had to add additional framing for sistering new placement of receptacles, lighting, and a flush mount medicine cabinet. The bathroom is adjacent to original lath and plaster walls on both sides, and in order for my new framing to be installed, I had to rip each 2x4 to 3 inches wide for clearance for the plaster keys. So I'm going to try and explain to you listening what he's talking about. So on lath plaster walls, the plaster is actually forced between the spaces of the lath, and it oozes out the back. And this oozing is what keys the plaster to the lath and holds it there.
Okay.
Right? So it's actually proud of the lath. So if you went to put new framing on this existing wall on the other side, you couldn't push it tight to the wall because the plaster keys are in the way.
Oh, okay.
Chip out those keys.
Somebody might be tempted to remove the keys, but then the plaster is very unstable on the
Yeah.
other side, and if you bump it, it could fall off, or it might even fall off as you're trying to break those off.
Yeah, if you took them off all the way across, but if you just took off 1.5 inches of key going up the wall, I don't think that's probably that problematic, but...
Well, and you could also run screws through the plaster into your new framing to secure it, and then you just have to patch over the screw heads.
Right.
But I think an even easier installation is to just use spray foam between the gap in the new framing and the lath and plaster that it's in front of.
That's exactly what I thought. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of spray foam, but
It's a very little amount that you'd be using.
It's not that much. It's canned spray foam. It is the perfect solution for this because it's going to hold it tight. It's going to because that stuff sticks like crazy,
and it expands into the voids.
And you don't have to remove any keys.
Yeah, and then you don't have to remove any keys or anything. Yeah. And no screws, no holes to repair.
It's an easy solution to a common problem in an old house.
Yeah.
How many cans do you think you'd need to fill that?
Oh, not even one.
Probably.
So
not.
the photograph, for those of you listening, that he sent us shows what I imagine is the space for his new flush mount medicine cabinet. And he's got framing that forms the opening for it, but there's a gap between the back of the stud and the existing plaster on the other side of the wall from the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And so he just needs to squirt some Pookie in there and get on with his life.
Yeah, because I'm not sure exactly what he's worried about, but like I'm worried that he cut all these nails, and now that's, it seemed like maybe he was worried about like pushing against the wall and the stuff like pushing in against that space and maybe cracking. I'm more worried that the plaster is just going to fall away from the
other side
on the other side and hit somebody in the head.
Well, in fairness,
I don't think there's a real
well, if he doesn't
risk of
remove
that.
the keys, that won't happen.
No,
right?
it will because the thing is, it's not connected to the studs anymore.
I got you. Okay.
It's just a plain.
Right,
he ripped out
there.
all the old framing
That's
and put
it.
in
That
new
was
stuff.
his question. That's like the heart of his question. Okay, got it.
Dan, that's an easy one, man. Just shoot some spray foam in that gap and continue with your bathroom remodel. It looks nice. Look what a good job he did there.
Mm-hmm.
Once it's all back together, I'm sure it'll look fantastic.
Yeah.
Have you had the pleasure of working on a house with plaster walls?
Yeah, actually. Yeah, we just knocked a bunch of holes in the bottom of the walls and let all the vermiculite drain out, and then ripped all the lath and plaster down after that.
That's a really messy demolition
It's a
job,
disgusting,
isn't it?
horrible job.
Man.
Boy, I tell you what, it complicates like simple things like adding an electrical box or like fishing wires and in lath and plaster walls. Like the fish tank like gets stuck on every one of those keys going down or going. It's a drag. But boy, it sure is a nice wall.
Yeah, there's that.
Does your house have plaster?
No, I wish it did. Everything else seems so cheap next to plaster. Drywall.
Hello, all. Here's my first of many questions about our new farmhouse. We are gutting everything down to the studs due to water damage and mold. We're coming across lath and plaster within the stud cavities on both the first and second floor exterior walls. The house was very well built in 1900. Was this some sort of old school air barrier? Love the show. Boy, we have a plaster theme today.
Yeah.
That kind of happens sometimes.
Mini splits in plaster.
Yeah. So this is basically 2 layers of lath and plaster. One sort of like inside the
Stud
in between
cavity.
the studs. Yeah.
Why would they have done that?
I came across some historical type reason for this.
Okay.
One, this is in Wisconsin. Apparently, this was a thing that German transplants from, people who came over from Germany and settled in the U.S. did. Maybe because they were used to the old wattle and daub. They have like all these half timber houses.
Yep.
If people know what that is, I don't know, but
Like a
sort of
Tudor.
like
Go ahead.
It looks sort of like a Tudor
Tudor, yeah.
style house.
With the
And
wood
so they,
members,
would
exposed.
fill in all these gaps with wattle and daub, which is just a mixture of like grass and mud.
Manure.
Yeah, and manure often. And but I think they were using it more for sound deadening than for an air barrier, but they may have been doing both. I mean, it definitely would have that effect if they got it in there pretty good.
I love it.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like this, but I have seen all manner of stuff jammed into stud cavities in old houses, like
Skeletons?
masonry, like mortar and bricks like stacked from plate to plate in every stud cavity,
or just dumped in there,
in there.
Yeah,
I've seen like
what would be the point of dumping in there?
Because you'd want just stop the air movement,
right?
And
but
anything helps.
Rather than lining them up and stacking them, just dumping them in there seems like there'd be a lot of holes still.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, we're going from an era where
Yeah.
there was absolutely no insulation whatsoever.
True.
So I have no idea.
So
I don't know what people were thinking.
Dumped bricks is better than nothing.
Yeah.
That's the takeaway.
I once got a call from one of my contributors in Stowe, Vermont, and he said, "I'm working on this project. You have to come by and look at it." And he was working on a building that had formerly been adjacent to a sawmill. And somebody had taken like 5/8 or 3/4 inch thick boards and stacked them one on top of the other, all the way from the foundation to the rafters, and made the solid wood. It was like CLT before there was such a thing, and I was like, I was just blown away.
Yeah,
he's like, I've never seen anything. The builder's like, I've never
Did
seen.
Did he leave it?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
It was the house.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But anyway, look up pugging. Apparently, that was what this was.
All right.
A term for this. I don't know.
It's
Good
funny
for
when
you,
I
Matt.
first
That's
saw this
awesome.
photograph, it looked entirely like asbestos to me. I was like, oh, that's asbestos. But then you get a closer look, and it's not.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are walls filled with asbestos all over the country, too. This might be my favorite question of all. This comes from our friend Barbara.
Yeah.
Barbara's in Georgia, right?
Yeah, we love her.
Barbara says, I can't get my trusty Milwaukee cordless impact driver to drive screws like it used to do. Now it's more of an influencer.
She's such a good writer.
Yeah.
I got a new battery, the highest amp hour choice at Home Depot. It cost over $50, more than half the cost of new kits with new tools and inferior batteries. I thought it was wasteful to get more than just what I needed. I already had a good tool, I thought, plus a drill charger and a handsome bag. Now I'm thinking I should have gotten another kit. I've killed 2 sets of batteries and most of my high-frequency hearing with this tool. I got it in about 2006. After I gave up on the Makita impact driver I wore out building my house. I like this Milwaukee a lot. It fits my hand. I don't like the ones with the massive batteries that let it stand up. They're too heavy. Should I get a new one like this one? Wasn't there some new technology that was supposed to make impact drivers quieter? Hydraulics or something? What? Barbara. So before we get into her update, so Barbara has a 12-volt Milwaukee cordless impact driver, and that's the one with the little stick-shaped battery. And she sent us a short video that showed us her trying to tighten some screws in what looked like a meter socket, right, or some other kind of electrical enclosure. And the driver just wouldn't put the screws in.
Yeah.
And so until this morning, I had the perfect solution, which was to throw all that stuff away and buy a new kit.
Meanwhile, I had gone behind your back and had a conversation with
Is that
Barbara.
where that came from? Oh,
well,
right.
yeah. So,
She said-
like right after she sent the email, because she's a regular, correspondent of ours, and I enjoy
Reading her stuff.
I bet
reading
you
her
do.
stuff.
She's your
And
kind of,
so
yeah.
So we were going back and forth a little bit, and I recommended maybe just seeing if she could replace the motor. Although I thought that might be more expensive. I was like, that's probably what's going bad. There's probably something with the brushes.
I was going to say, what made you think that it was a problem with the motor?
Because this is before there were really any brushless tools. As far as I know, the first brushless impact drivers came on the market somewhere, maybe, I can't remember. I had looked it up. I think it was around 2009.
I think they were around before, but they were expensive and rare.
Yeah. Well, as far as the first impact driver,
Yeah.
the brushless motors were around for a lot longer than that. But when they started putting them in tools, it was quite a bit later. So anyway, I was like, you probably have a brushed motor. The brushes have probably worn out. The commutator might be screwed up. I don't know. But anyway, the brushes were the main thing. So she opened it up, and it was basically like everything was tied together. Like the gearbox, the motor, everything looked like just one unit. Somehow she managed to get it apart, though.
The shorthand in the industry is they call it a can, which means that the transmission and the motor and the brush assembly are all in one self-contained thing, because of course it makes it cheap and easy to put together.
Yeah. But anyway, she
then
was
you have
able
to
to buy a new motor, $17 with shipping, replaced it, and it works great now.
I love
Which
it.
blew my mind. I would have never, ever, ever anticipated that would work.
Yeah.
So my immediate solution was to get a new one, right?
Yeah. I think I recommended that too, sort of in the beginning, just because I thought it would cost a lot more. Maybe I didn't realize that these motors would be so cheap, but then I looked it up and it was like super cheap.
Well, she probably did it just to do it.
I think
Yeah.
she wanted
Experience of
to
it.
save it,
Yeah.
right?
Well, there's that,
And the ecological
True. Yeah.
impact of throwing tools away.
Yeah. She's inspired me because I destroyed a hammer drill of mine by accident using it to mix mud.
A cordless one or a corded
A
one?
cordless one. Yeah, it's not even that old. Really, it was under warranty when it first happened, but I had a backup, so I didn't even bother.
Yeah.
And now it's just sitting around doing nothing. But I tore up the gearbox in that thing. The transmission is shot.
I liked her mention of that smell that's associated.
I want to read that
Okay,
more.
okay.
So,
Because we all know that smell.
so this morning we heard back from Barbara after her, clandestine conversations with Matt. And she said, I did some more research into the physics of exactly is happening in an aging motor. As far as I can tell, the windings in the motor can have a failure of the insulation, get crammed with carbon dust or other conductive crud, which lowers the resistance and pulls more current from the battery. She says, seriously, don't use compressed air to blow on a motor housing. And why? Is it because of the graphite?
All that dust and everything is going to come out. And you're
Is it
gonna
bad
breathe
for
that.
you?
I don't know if it's bad for you, but it can't be good for you.
Right.
She says,
Do you think that's why she's saying that? Or
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
All these extra amps are burned up as heat instead of turning into torque. This is basic Ohm's law logic. Motors are supposed to have a really high insulation resistance. When it starts to fall off, then the motor no longer does the same amount of work within the given voltage. Apparently, none of the sources I found came right out and say this, but that's the manifestation of the issue for me in particular. My research did reveal that the smell I associated with my grandmother's old Sunbeam mixer creaming butter and sugar for pound cake is actually ozone and vaporized graphite. When my impact driver started making that smell, it made me hungry for pound cake. But in fact, it should have told me the brushes were breaking down. I always thought worn brushes manifested as an on-off problem. Apparently, this other failure mode is also common. There's a film that forms on the commutator made of copper and carbon and water vapor. It requires the exact right amount of current and humidity to make this protective film that is constantly broken down and reformed. I expect that my very humid climate and only using my tool occasionally made it prone to overfilming, which lowered the resistance even more, burning off even more of the current as heat, running down my battery really fast without even delivering enough torque to get the job done. And also making the smell that makes me think of butter and vanilla. I have a lot of tools that are now brushless, substituting permanent magnets and microcontrollers for carbon contacts. I will miss the sense memory of my grandmother's kitchen, but I don't have a lot of patience for a screw that won't pull the work together. That's some good writing.
Yes.
So I love that smell.
Who doesn't? Yeah.
The smell of ozone.
Yeah.
So I
Do you have a show and tell? That you
do.
can-
So this is what I was going to tell Barbara to buy, and it doesn't have to be this brand. This happens to be
That's what we used in my carpentry workshop. Yeah.
Yep. So these are 12-volt DeWalt's, and the kit that I got because I saw them at the STAFTA show, which is the Specialty Tool and Fastener Dealers Association. I was so intrigued, I asked them to send me this, and I think they are sweet little units. But the reason to go with the 12-volt in anybody's product line versus the bigger 18s is this weighs half as much.
Right.
And it honestly, I haven't found anything it can't do. It obviously won't run like 100 structural screws like a 18-volt with a huge battery pack, but it has enough torque to run them. It just won't run as many. And for folks who aren't like building decks, it's probably all you need most of the time.
Yeah. And there's a lot of those subcompacts.
Yeah. Makita has a
makes some
nice
nice
set
ones.
too.
Yeah.
I like DeWalt's and Makita's because they do stand up, Barbara. And, sometimes you put it on a cart next to you or what countertop or whatever, and it's nice to be able to pick it up by the handle instead of fumbling with it.
Yeah.
So what do those go for?
So I think this kit is like $180 or something
That's
ridiculous.
seemingly reasonable.
So when she paid $50 for a battery
Yeah, right.
alone, and I looked up yesterday, Milwaukee had a 12-volt kit that has since replaced hers with brushless tools, and it was like $150 with 2 batteries. So, I mean,
Did
it's
it come
really
with the bag and the bits and everything?
This one comes with the pair of 2 amp-hour batteries, a charger, and a little canvas bag to put it in.
Okay.
But you could buy a lot of backup motors.
I know
for that.
and I, like I said, I never would have anticipated that would be a cost-effective or practical solution.
I didn't either.
Yeah. Well, thanks to Barbara.
Yeah, now we know. And
We
everybody
always learn
knows.
stuff from her.
Yeah.
She, for those of you listening who want to see Barbara's breakdown, rebuild, and demonstration of her mediocre impact driver and repaired one, should check out her videos that we'll put on the podcast page.
Definitely worth your time.
It's totally
Did you
worth
watch
your
them
time.
already?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, she's got a cool setup for making these
Yeah?
videos.
Oh.
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Basically, she's got her, I think, iPhone set up so that it's like over top of this mat.
And you
so
just see your
watch
hands and
her
then taking
hands
the
do
thing
this stuff.
apart.
I
Yeah.
wonder how she sets that up.
I'm sure she'll send you a picture.
I'm
if you
sure
ask.
she will.
Although she might not be able to take a picture of it with the phone in the
true.
dock. So.
Barbara, it's always great to hear from you. I'm just going to tell you one more thing. So she was considering buying new tools because she decided she wanted a mixer,
A paint mixer, right?
a paint mixer, because one of the kits that she looked at had that as one of the offerings, right?
Right.
And she had a 5-gallon pail of paint she wanted to mix, but instead she found a mixing paddle and put that in her drill press and then mixed the paint.
She's such a homesteader.
I love it so much. So, you guys have anything to add before we do our little end note here? I can't wait to finish the
I
end
know.
note.
I'm really excited about it.
So a couple people yesterday sent me a piece that ran on the CBS affiliate in Pittsburgh, KDKA television, and involves a housing subdivision in South Fayette, Pennsylvania. And apparently these homes, 45 of these homes have a problem with the neighbor's house melting their vinyl siding. And I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast before, but this is something that happens with modern insulated glass windows, especially when they have low-E coatings. And it's exacerbated when the window, because it has a vacuum in it, the glass is actually narrower in the center of the sash than it is on the perimeter, so it makes a convex,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
concave shape that focuses the light. And it easily can get to 200 degrees on the other side, and it can get way hotter. In fact, I remember reading about a hotel in Las Vegas designed by the architect Frank Gehry, and its aluminum reflective skin was like setting patio umbrellas on a neighboring hotel on fire.
Burning people's retinas.
Taking out the competition.
And it was like bleaching patterns in the window
Wow.
shades and all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah, there was
it's
something like that happened a
crazy.
few years ago in London, I think, too, with some building like melted a car or something on the street.
What? That's insane.
Yeah.
So these folks in this housing subdivision are obviously upset about this, and they called this TV news crew to come out, and they did, and they shot some video of the very distinctive trails of the sun's path on these vinyl-sided homes.
Yeah. Yeah, because these low-E coatings reflect something like 96% of the infrared radiation, which is, carried along with the
Light.
visible light coming
Right.
out of the sun. And that's the part that is responsible for the heating. And so it's reflecting all of that off. And if these windows are somewhat concave and it's concentrating it. But I mean,
ideal.
it doesn't even, I think, need to be that concave. I mean, it's just
I think that makes it
reflecting.
worse.
It probably does make it worse. But I mean, a couple weeks ago when I was up in Maine with Ben Bogey, I was just standing in front of one of these windows and, the sun had come up. It was early in the morning. And it got really hot just standing in the reflection off that window. I was like, man.
Really?
It wasn't like burning me hot,
Yeah.
but it was like noticeably warmer. 'Cause
It's
it
like
was,
taking
it was,
a magnifying glass and burning leaves, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, it was a cold morning out.
okay,
Everybody's like all
yeah.
bundled up in jackets and
Just the
stuff. And I'm like,
sun.
where's all this heat coming from? And I was like, oh, that window.
Practically a tanning bed.
Yeah.
So how far apart were these houses again?
Well, they look to be about 3 feet apart
Okay,
in my...
so that's the biggest
Well,
issue, right?
They were
I-
probably like, I don't know,
10 or
20 feet.
15.
Oh,
Yeah,
well, that's more
something. I mean, it was
reasonable. Okay.
there was some space, but it was probably the minimum amount they could get away with.
Yeah.
So obviously the TV news host called the home builder to get their take on this situation. And they also called the NAHB that explained to them what was going on here, that it was not all that uncommon, and it's frankly pretty easy to fix. I think one of the easiest things to do is to put window shades or screens actually on the reflecting window, and that solves the problem in many cases.
Except that it has to be on the outside.
Right. What do you mean it has to be on the outside?
To cover your windows on the outside.
Right.
So most double hung windows have a screen on the outside.
No, they're to the inside.
They're not.
Are you talking about blinds or what are you talking
I'm
about?
talking about insect screens.
Yeah. So yeah, if you have an insect screen,
Yeah.
I guess that would do it.
That's what does it.
None of these houses had storm windows with screens or anything like that.
Also, the double hung window still has a screen channel, and you still can put a screen in it.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's the houses don't come with screens or people take them out seasonally, but I know that's one of the easy things you can do to solve this problem in many cases, because it cuts down on the sun coming in, and cuts down on it being on its reflection too.
Oh, I was thinking the screen to the inside of my storm windows. That's why I was picturing it that way. Right?
You guys, people don't have storm windows outside of New England
That's-
or the
yeah.
upper Midwest. So just put that out of your head.
Okay.
It's like you have a double hung window, you put a screen in it. If you're a really dutiful homeowner, you take it out seasonally. Most
Right.
people leave them in all year round.
Yeah.
Like me.
Not me.
You take yours out?
Oh yeah.
I do too.
I hate looking through screens.
Me
I don't even
too.
like having them up there in the summer,
Yeah.
except that I like to open my windows and don't want to fill my house with bugs.
I fill my house with bugs.
yeah.
You prefer bugs versus screens.
Generally,
That
for the
makes a lot
same
of
reason
sense.
that you're saying. Because I live on a road where I get a lot of dirt on my windows. So if you do a combination of the dust and the screen, I can't see out my windows. So, yeah.
yeah.
So you just open them up and let the dirt and bugs come in.
Essentially.
Okay.
When I lived on a dirt road, those screens would just fill up with dirt.
Yeah,
I
they
had
just-
to clean
they
them
just get-
all the
yeah,
time. Like
they're
I'd
just
go
a
out there with
pain.
with a hose
Yeah,
and just
that's what I
spray
had
down
been
the
doing
screens.
until I took them out. Yeah.
So my favorite part of this whole story, and I apologize to all you listening for the lengthy windup, but here's when the KDKA reporter Megan Schilling contacted Ryan Homes, who's the home builder here, and anyone who's from the Pittsburgh area will certainly recognize that name. They build thousands of homes and have for decades. But a spokesman for NVR, the holding company that owns Ryan Homes, told KDKA's Megan Schilling no comment and said its company policy was to not speak to reporters about anything.
Well, that covers him, right?
yeah.
I was like, that's the home builder you trust, right?
I'm sure if you came to him and said, "We love your homes. Tell us about them," they would probably have something to say.
That was hilarious.
Funny.
There's one other thing we have to get to here. You guys remember our friends Allison and Donovan from Windy City Rehab?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we've talked
They're
about
not
them
our
in the
friends.
past. No, I'm sure they don't think we were friends. They're getting sued.
Again, right?
Yeah. Can you imagine?
It's just like, how many times have we talked about
Are
them?
we
Is this
going
the
into
same-
season 3 with
yeah,
these
is this
people?
the same lawsuit, or
this is a new
set of
lawsuit. This is a new lawsuit. A month after filing a lawsuit against the stars of HGTV's Windy City Rehab, a Chicago couple is now pushing for the show to be pulled off television permanently.
What I've been saying.
The couple who purchased a $1.36 million home featured on the reality TV series claimed they were deceived into thinking the hosts were experts in their field. Did they watch the show? Is what I might ask.
Well, if somebody put them on TV,
You would think that
you
they
would
knew what
think
they were
that
doing.
They knew they were doing.
Yeah. And this comes from remodeling.com. Attorneys for homeowners James and Anna Morrissey cite the Illinois Consumer Fraud and Deceptive Business Practices Acts in a motion to add Discovery, the parent company of HGTV, to their lawsuit. There you have it. Allison and Victoria and Donovan Eckert, the filing claims the episode represented, quote, the renovation of the property was complete and was of the highest quality. However, the homeowner said within a day of moving into the home, issues were discovered, including major leaks, poorly installed windows, and defective and shoddy work. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Well, what is the time frame on those projects that they do for
So
those shows?
with all the hubbub between that we've talked about,
Yeah.
and then the show's only been on a season.
Yeah, no. I mean the builds that they do.
What about it?
Like, how long? What kind of time do they spend on these builds if they're so shoddy?
I have no idea.
I mean, they slap them together in a week?
Well, I mean, if you watch the shows, you see like the quality and attention to detail are not the emphasis.
Right.
I'm wondering though about the people who who think that what they see on TV
is good stuff.
Is good stuff
that they want to
also,
actually buy,
or that they think that like the people who are on TV are professionals at the thing. Like, do they think that like Mark Hamill is actually a Jedi? You know, like, but I saw it on the screen. Like, just because they're doing something on TV doesn't mean they're actually like that thing. You know,
right?
I just
Mostly
play
just
an
actors.
architect or a builder or whatever on
right.
TV. Doesn't mean that I am one.
He's not a Jedi?
Oh my God, you guys are crazy.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks to Matt, Kiley, and Jeff for joining me. And thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Whew. Happy building. Thanks for listening.